Ladies and gentlemen, when a nation faces an existential crisis, or they are in dire need based on the relative answers of what a citizenry needs, sometimes it is the responsibility of that state to infringe upon the liberty of others in order to protect the long-range liberty of the collective. Now, in doing so, the arguments that we've heard so far from the government side says that as an absolute, we must be able to minimally infringe on the liberty of individuals so that they maximize their utility. Because rights and the protection of their own individual autonomy is more important than worrying about the collective needs of society. However, what we will say in our extension is in effect that in times of relative dissonance of societal progress and looking at the long run, we sometimes have to be able to infringe on those rights and on those libertarian ideals in order to make sure that society in the long run will be better off. Now, rebuttal, and we'll get into some of the points that we have to be able to address calmly. Okay, so first of all, maximizing utility doesn't always necessarily mean maximizing happiness. When we are able to protect other rights in society like liberty and life, sometimes it's the job of the government to interfere. And we believe we should interfere a lot on this side because it is known that the people, when they are given more order and when they are given less restrictions, there is a paradigm that must be seen. On one hand, they come up here and say that we have to be able to send our children to the schools that we want to. We have to be able to pay less taxes. We have to be able to have more freedom in the commerce and the markets that we need. But when we see this, there is too much freedom that is being used. The government must step in and restrict their ability to do this. Because in the long run, for example, when I invest in a pension plan because the government requires me to, I am giving up some of my money, but the government is looking out for me because of my ability to say that I will have a secure retirement and I won't be a burden on other people in the future. They ignore reality and they just talk in this theoretical plane of Mills and of Aristotle saying that excellence and utility are predicated upon one another. But what we have to say is that we are justified to take the money and taxes and privileges because these people that live in our society don't just have rights that the society grants to them, but they also have obligations to the people because of their ability to be able to act in those markets and to be able to act in that country. It's a two-sided game. Not just about maximizing your personal utility, but also giving the marginal utility to society so that it's not just everyone has the opportunity that they hold so dear, but also being able to level the playing field when these people are born. Because what they're saying, essentially, their philosophy being, is that when you are born, the only thing that you have is the life that God gave you, and everything else is just going to be given by chance. And in doing so, what we're saying on our side, that does not reflect socioeconomic reality, it doesn't reflect demographics, and it doesn't reflect anything else in society which is needed to be brought transparent forward. We think that when they say that charity needs to take the place of government, what happens when charities don't have enough money? Who is there to step in? The government, of course, to be able to back this. That's why they back pension plans. That's why they give federal deposit insurance. That's why they give mechanisms that they are doing, because when personal security is violated and when collective security is strengthened, that means that as a whole, we're granting more utility to society in the long run instead of looking for obscure short-term gains. So we're going to start off with this. The opposition, the first op started off and gave their last sentence by saying that the government's job is to provide you with security for the long run. And that's where we're going to start our extension. Because we have to talk about not just what's happening today, but what's going to be happening in the future. If I can prove to you that utility does not always grant happiness, but does protect personal liberties and does protect your right to life and the existence of society, then what I can do is show you that it's possible to get both gains that we're showing on this side with their metric analysis, and in doing so, we're able to do so through 3 points. First of all, the moral relativity that's being brought up by this side. Second of all, standards versus absolutes and why flexibility in government policy is needed over that of an absolute protection of personal liberties that they're in charge of. And finally, why long-term stability is contingent on long-term policy goals and not on short-term happiness. So first of all, getting to moral relativity. We heard on this side that the state cannot weigh the needs of those when it treads on someone else. When someone is more disadvantaged, they don't have the same equal rights to be able to move forward and have the same opportunity that other individuals are necessarily born with. But the state has an obligation to provide utility while balancing rights and obligations. This is the reason why we have taxes. This is the reason why we have the right to tax individuals. It's the reason why we have a national draft. Because there are other concerns that are important to protect the society so that individuals are able to operate within that free market that they hold so dear. The government's job is to act as a caretaker, and in the cases of societal unequanimity, the job of the government is to make sure that it's not necessarily more opportune, but so that they have the ability to play on the same field as other people. Now, we think that there's two ways to achieve happiness. One is through being excellent or being talented, and the other way is to be granted the utility that you're otherwise missing because your conditions don't allow it. Go.
So if you seem to think that having an ability to do something automatically means you have an obligation to do that thing, if you have the ability to have sex with someone really undesirable, but they really, really need a leg, do you have an obligation to do that?
No, but what I do is if I'm a parent and I have the ability to have a child, I also have an obligation to provide for that child until they get to the point where they're able to go into a certain point. I don't just have my wife have the baby and say, hi infant, you're off on your own now, I'm not going to do anything else to assist you. I nurture them, I give them the ability to move forward. So it's the same exact role with governments and citizens. Citizens sometimes are not necessarily born with the strengths that other people have, and it's the government's job to be able to equalize that. It's not just the equality argument that we heard from the first opposition, it's also by giving them the tools that they're able to use in the long run. And if they don't have the tools, then essentially they will have much less utility, therefore going against the metric that you're trying to support. So when we go a little bit further, we understand that they're saying the following. This is nature versus nurture. We argue that less restrictions on society prevent society from moving forward. The evolution of societies is done when the government is the anchor of policy, being able to adjust itself to the needs of its electorate and of its citizenry. The jungle that exists in the eye of the government is this libertarian plane where everything is nice and fluffy and rights are more important than your ability to exercise those rights, leads to a situation, as we call Damocles' sword. Society will always worry about their liberty and its rights being taken advantage of, and in doing so, you'll see society fractures erupt because the minorities that we're trying to take care of will get angry and it'll lead to civil disobedience and also maybe other disturbances. We think that as we gave you parent analysis, that it's our job not just to be able to provide the faculties for our citizens to move forward, but also to make sure that in times of crisis and also in times where equality is lessened and utility is hurt because of that, to step in and to adjust that. Whether it's a max gross providing of services or whether it's just providing certain protections. In doing so in both cases of this scale that we're talking about of granting liberties, we need to make sure that utility exists before happiness can be achieved. That's why I urge you to oppose. Thank you.